I want to talk Horizon Zero Dawn fashion because these people have just the worst fashion sense, or not just impractical.
Well, no, are you thinking in terms of practicality or fashion? Because if you're thinking in terms of fashion, I would pick up whatever piece of metal I could find, put that thing on me.
Are you saying you would go Gundam even if it slowed you down to a spider's crawl because all that heavy metal?
If you're talking about me specifically,
Yes.
I would wear plate armor and I would crawl because
You would turn
at that
into
point,
like a spider crab.
yes, because at that point I don't have any mobility as I am.
But you look cool, crawling around on the ground.
Especially if I can just have like a dagger or something and crawl up to people and just
Start stabbing their ankles.
yeah.
Another kind of a weird fashion thing in the Horizon Zero Dawn world, kind of a fun thing that people do. Like instead of ear piercings or stuff, they thread wires into their skin.
Ooh.
It's kind of a weird, kind of a fun fashion thing they're doing.
But do you know anybody who would do that in real life?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know anybody. I know people would.
Okay. That's the point. Do we know people personally who would do that? Just like, do we know people personally who would take scraps of metal and put them on their body? That would be me.
Yes, it's called Joseph.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Speculation Station. I'm Joseph Thomas, here as always with my good buddy Eric.
Uka shaka.
Have you got a feeling?
Deep inside of me, baby.
Welcome to the show where we take a video game, be it a single title or an entire series, and we turn it into a movie.
I think that's the first time you got it right on the first take. That's
Yeah.
impressive. I could hear how careful you were with saying that.
I was doing a walking. I was walking through it.
Christopher walking on in.
We don't just plan to make any movie, though.
No,
What would you
sir.
say is our aim?
What's our aim? The aim of the game, brother, is to make a movie that gets 55% or more. The more is not important on Rotten Tomatoes. A task I feel like we've completed thus far with our
Yes.
quirky Monaco film and the depressing dog movie of Pokemon.
I think we've actually done really well with all the ones that we've been given so far. Not what most people would expect, but that's the point, I think.
Well, I'm glad you brought up expectations, because today we're talking about Horizon Zero Dawn. An open world robot dinosaur game with a story that's there too.
Would you say the story is important?
I would say you definitely can't complete the game without going through the story.
Okay.
I can say that with 100% confidence.
Well, because there's a lot of games out there nowadays that are like survival themed. You can just play the game without ever touching the story, you know?
You cannot... To play Horizon Zero Dawn, you must sit through the story. At least like 30 minutes of cutscenes before you can even play the game. Much less experience the wonderful world of freedom that Guerrilla Games has handcrafted.
Interesting.
This also marks our first game that you know nothing about.
I've heard of it.
Well, right, but like story-wise,
I've heard of it.
you know there's robot dinosaurs and
I do know that.
bows.
Like, you shoot arrows at 'em?
Yeah, like that's the whole
I did
thing.
not know that.
Okay, you knew they're robot dinosaurs.
You know, my hearing is what is called selective.
I was gonna make like a dinosaur like selective evolution joke, but I couldn't like think of one. There's something in there. There's something. You combine the elements. There's something.
If you've got a good joke for us, email it.
Please. Well, I'll insert it in.
We'll do a re-upload. We'll do a re-uploaded series of best comment jokes.
Best fan submitted jokes that were better than our original improv jokes. It's a whole podcast of new stuff. It's a whole new episode. But Horizon Zero Dawn is, I think, our first game where we are gonna stick pretty close to the story. Like, even closer than Portal, I would say. Where we kind of...
Really?
We stuck to the beats, but we kind of... In between those beats, we kind of moved around. Because Horizon Zero Dawn, it is an open world game. But it is also very story-driven. And quality of the story aside, it is a very complicated one. And since we don't have to actually really make anything up this time, I don't think, most of our time will be spent trying to figure out how to put a 80-hour game into an hour and a half, 2-hour movie.
Ooh, okay.
It's a little formula shift here for you.
So this is a little different challenge than we've had before.
Because, I mean, Portal is a very short game. Fallout has long stories, but we made our own story. So this is kind of a marriage of the two, where it's a very long, complicated, open world story with a bunch of names that you can't remember and a bunch of crap.
Robo-dinosaur
crap? A lot of robo-dinosaur crap. And we got to figure out what crap to cut and what crap to keep.
I've got my shovel and I've got my scissors.
I got my little nose clip so I don't smell the dino crap because it's stinky.
It's stinky.
So I'm just going to kind of break you through the main beats of the story.
All right.
Understand, there is a lot more in there.
More than meets the eye.
More than meets the eye of these dinos. And obviously, if you have any questions,
Robo-dinosaurs.
I've played through the game a couple of times, so I can answer any questions.
Okay.
Basically, a few decades after the year of our Lord, the worst year ever, 2020, people are having AI and technological advancements, as you'd expect. And this guy called Ted Faro, he has Faro Industries, which is like a tech company. And he's making these cool-ass robots, right? Like, really cool. And so he starts shipping them out, right? And then he realizes he can make more money shipping them out to wars. So, he's sending these robots down to fight each other. And people are obviously raising ethical questions. But he doesn't really care because he's making big money.
Yeah. Plus, what are the ethical concerns of robots fighting?
Right. So, like, his last creation, or I guess latest, because I guess he wasn't expected to be last, is a robot that can override.
Wait a minute, is that a spoiler?
I guess it's a spoiler. Something I'm going to say like 30 seconds. So he creates a robot capable, because like there's robots on both sides now.
Okay.
Like humans aren't really fighting anymore. It's all robot.
See, that's not an ethical concern then.
Right, that isn't at that point. But he makes a robot that can corrupt other robots and turn them basically to his side.
Oh, so he's pulling an old Ganondorf Guardians thing.
Yeah. And it's really good. It's super effective. And it costs a lot of money.
Cha-ching.
Cha-ching, baby. The problem is that it is completely self-sufficient. So it runs on its own network.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, bad start.
Bad start.
It also, instead of having to charge with the good old batteries, Ted had the genius idea to make it run on biomass. AKA humans and plant life.
Needs to consume them.
And it can reproduce at super high rates.
Well, okay, whoa, reproduce.
Reproduces and make copies of itself. So, believe it or not, this doesn't go well. So, the world gets basically overrun. And, they turn all the robots to, the anti-human side because they need biomass, right? So, they're, destroying forests. And basically, it's projected that the world is going to turn into, a gray, empty shell just full of robots that'll eventually die.
Here's my first point.
Yeah.
We're not changing the story. Of course we're not. But I would like to make a few suggestions.
Is it that we haven't even gotten to Aloy, the main character, yet?
No. It's the fact that... Hi. My name is Joseph Thomas.
Hey, Joe.
And I'd like to talk to you about making your AI not kill you. The first step
is to not make AI.
First of all, don't make AI.
Yeah.
Secondly, don't make it self-sufficient.
Yeah. Thirdly,
don't ever make it have the ability to reproduce and or construct new AI.
And or run on biomass. Whose dumb idea was that?
No, that's not the worst idea.
Well,
if you have it to where it is not self-sufficient, but it can run on biomass, i.e. it has to be hooked up to a biomass reactor or something, that's a bit different.
That's a little different.
Because then what you could do is you could set up basically a compost heap,
This is my compost heap, the robot battery.
Yeah.
Well,
It would stink, but
They didn't think of that one, unfortunately.
No.
Or he didn't care because he was a money hungry boy.
He was also probably on the biomass.
He was on the cocaine. So the world is getting overrun by these robots, and everyone realizes, oh crap, we're running on limited time here. So this is when the story gets really cool, by the way. I really do like this part. Ted, the instigator of the death of Earth, reaches out to one of his ex-coworkers named Elizabeth. That's Elizabeth, not Elizabeth. Don't get it wrong.
What? Why?
Good question.
Did they drop the H because they were just like
they said it'd take too long. We got robots coming. We got to speed things up. We got to cut corners wherever we can. As she devises a solution called Zero Dawn, which is basically the only way the world will get saved.
Okay.
So to do this, she creates an AI. Now, hang on. I know it didn't work last time, but this one's a good one.
So we got the Terminator thing going.
Right. So this Gaia, this AI is called Gaia, and it basically, Elizabeth realizes that, well, the world's gonna die, we're all gonna die, but eventually, one day, humans will live again, thanks to Gaia, who will eventually terraform and replenish Earth with the plants and humans. Like it has like incubation chambers and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So it's like a massive machine.
Yeah, so like once the robots run out of biomass, eventually they'll like power down. And then
Gaia it will just sweep it. Gaia will come up, sweep it clean, drop the humans off, and then itself will power down.
Yeah. However, making it a good AI is not easy, so the military drafts pretty much everybody to just try to hold the robots off as long as they can. Like, it's literally just suicide. But it's like either them or us, guys.
Well, and at least they're planning for the future. It's not like they're so selfish.
It's actually kind of optimistic.
Right, they're not so selfish as to say, we are all that's left. It's like, no, we'll go ahead and just make these little embryonic, chrono whatever.
So, like,
let the robots die out.
So, like, in real life, it definitely wouldn't happen.
No, of course not.
Hooray. So basically what happens is every human dies, except for some that are, like, protected within Gaia, and then they eventually die, and that's pretty much it. That's like the setups for the story.
Wait a minute.
That's the backstory.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Repeat they all die?
Basically every human dies, but remember they have like incubation chambers and stuff inside of Gaia.
Okay.
So like like all the stuff is like they already got sperm and eggs and all that stuff, so they can make.
I guess so it's like little insta humans bottles.
Yeah. You just shake it up. And then
add water.
It's like one of those little pill things with a foam dinosaur.
It grows.
So a couple of centuries pass, and then Gaia replenishes the Earth.
Gaia says, I've been holding on to these babies.
Yeah. And then
I don't like holding on to these babies no more.
I'm sick of these babies. All right. So now we go to present day. now that we spent 7 minutes talking about the backstory, which is really cool. You get a human.
Let's go ahead and bring up the first question.
Yeah.
How would we want to represent the backstory in the movie?
That is big question number one. Let's hold off on that. Let me get through the main plot, which is actually pretty short in comparison.
Okay.
Because much of the game is spent in these like old business towers and underground bunkers learning about the story.
Gotcha.
So Aloy, the redhead with a bad attitude, she is an outcast from birth because she doesn't have a mother that they know of, and she's born into a tribe that has like very traditional values, and so.
Whoa, you're not mentioning something here.
What?
You said tribes.
Yeah.
Why? What do you mean tribes?
Well, when Gaia replenished the Earth. It's kind of hard to conceptualize, but like Gaia isn't like one thing. Like there's Gaias kind of all over the place, or like I guess like pods all over the place. So they like put humans.
Gaia pods.
Yeah, so there's like 7 or 8 tribes in the game who have varying degrees of like skill with certain things or like technological advances. Like the Nora tribe, which is kind of the main tribe of the game, are very like kind of Eskimo-y. Like they use bows, they wear hoods, all their stuff is made out of like logs. Meanwhile, you have the people like the Karja who have like beautiful gold spun buildings. Like they're very kind of shock-y, if that makes sense. Like very Indian.
Oh, okay.
Influence.
Shocky, as in like, yeah.
Or Saki, maybe? Whatever. Anyway, so Aloy is born, and since she kind of arrives on the doorstep, so to speak. And since she doesn't have a mother, there's a very traditional tribe. She is outcast.
They don't know necessarily if she is of the tribe.
Basically. Yeah. So she is sent to live with an outcast named Rost. And when she's like 6 or so, she's like running around the fields, a little dumb kid. She falls into a hole, and it turns out it's an underground bunker. And in there, she finds what's called a focus, which is like a little triangle thing that you put on your ear. And that basically opens the world to her. She can like now see like files from people, or she can like scan the environment. It's basically the HUD. In gaming
so
terms.
this was something that was invented years ago.
This was invented in the, I guess what we're calling the past, and everyone had one back then. They're basically the smartphones of that day.
Okay.
And then she just happens to find one, and obviously no one has one because they're these primitive tribes. But this kind of gives her a leg up. And then she learns that she could be accepted into the tribe if she becomes a seeker. And the way to do that is to pass like a trial or something like that. That's held when she's 18 or she comes of age or whatever, that kind of thing. So like for her entire life, she's training, with a bow, with running, with parkour, hardcore parkour. Eventually, she makes it through the trial. She is about to become a full-time seeker when the tribe is attacked by a bunch of like what looks like bandits. And they have like strange machines, like basically a Gatling gun that like shoots arrows.
Oh, nice.
And stuff. And Aloy almost is killed by the leader, but Rost saves her. She sees that the leader has a focus just like her. And that's kind of that's a very rare thing. And then she also noticed that
that would explain the strange machines.
Right. She noticed there was a man at the village the other day, or the night before the trial, who also had a focus. And he kind of blew her off when she tried to bring her up. So she finds out where he comes from. And basically, the next portion of the game is full open world, but you're following him. And so eventually, you get to the city. It's this giant city. You find out that these cultists are part of a group called the Eclipse, and that Aloy specifically was targeted because she looks so similar to Elizabeth, who was the woman who made the Zero Dawn project.
Yeah.
So basically, the next big portion of the game is Aloy like digging through ruins and stuff like that, uncovering the past. Then she's contacted by this guy called Silence, who is also like really interested in the old ones and also has a focus. And he's kind of similar to her, he's scouring old ruins. But he needs her because she has like DNA. She has very similar DNA of Elizabeth, and they find out she's like a clone of Elizabeth.
Oh.
And so using her DNA, she can like access stuff that Silence couldn't.
Because everything is like bio-locked,
right. Yeah. So basically, they eventually find out Elizabeth made a bunch of AIs to like help Gaia out. Like there was one called Apollo, which was basically a giant library. But there was one called Hades, which was basically a kill switch just in case something went wrong. For some reason, Hades has malfunctioned, and the cultists are using that.
I couldn't imagine why.
Who could have thought? We don't know. We actually still don't know why. But the cultists are using Hades to basically like take over the world, so to speak. A classic bad guy thing.
Yeah.
So basically, eventually what happens is they find out that Gaia self-destructed, but in her last moment, she created a clone of Elizabeth, which is Aloy, sent her out of the incubation chamber into the Nora lands, and Aloy manages to stop Hades, and then Silence. We find out he was the original founder of Eclipse, but he basically, what's the word? He went good, so to speak. And then Aloy defeats Hades, and then at the very end, post-credit scene, we show that Sylens has taken Hades and is still working with him. Is mysterious. We don't know what's going on. Who's that? So that's like I know that wasn't quick. That was like 15 minutes, but that's
No, but that makes sense. It lays down the groundwork.
That's a very fast explanation of Horizon Zero Dawn.
Honestly, it sounds straight up like a movie. That's the first thing to notice.
Right. And
it's very well written. It's engaging.
It's fine, yeah. I'm not a fan of like the Aloy story that much. I definitely like the backstory a lot.
I like the concept where it's something that we've seen in sci-fi a few times before. Here's what happens. Here's an apocalypse. Here's something that is kind of a stupid apocalypse, let's be honest. This should not have happened, but it did happen.
Because of human,
so how are they dealing
human
with it?
error.
Right. But human error on a scale that, in real opinion, let's say, is there's a reason why it's science fiction.
Yeah. For now, at least.
No.
I shall not think of it.
Build Hades. Do it now.
So, like, most of the questions we usually ask are pretty much answered here. Like, we have the story structure.
Yeah.
It's not dissimilar to a movie, but there are certain points that I can kind of outline where, we need a second act to end here, and it doesn't really end here because that's not really how a 60-hour game works. There's like a lot of little like things like that kind of muddle up a clear structure like we usually try to have.
Well, it's the same thing of turning something that would be more like a series into a film. Because in that, I'm assuming you have different missions, and each mission has its own kind of arc
something
to
like
it.
that, yeah, or quests or what have you.
Yeah.
So
you could say the same thing about Skyrim. You could say the same thing about Fallout.
Sure, yeah.
How are we going to bring in the lore?
Yeah.
So now that we know the setup, where do we want the film to start?
That's a good question. I think we should stick with Aloy for the most part. So
if we start with maybe her being young,
yeah, she finds the focus, and then the game literally has a montage as she grows older and is better at trading. So it's just that kind of
sure. Yeah, well, hey, why not?
I mean, the first act of the game is pretty. I see no problem to keep it or to make it different. We introduce the Nora tribe. We show that Aloy is a little kid. She's outcast with Ross. She trains. She goes through the trial, and then, right as she's about to be accepted, chaos happens.
Here's the question.
Yeah.
Does Ross finally decide which of one of the other friends' characters he wants to continue dating?
Yes, it's Monica, actually. She is the leader of the Eclipse.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, I'm cool with that. I'm 100% cool with that. We basically set it up, and that almost sounds just straight up like a blockbuster.
Right.
Here's your character introduced,
The problem is what comes after that, because, unfortunately, like you said, this would be a good series, or even like a trilogy, but that's not how Speculative works. We gotta make one film out of this. So, we're 30 minutes in, and it's a pretty good 30 minutes. But after this, the game kind of breaks down a little bit because, for the most part, it's been really streamlined so far. You don't really have the access to the open world. You don't really have anything you could do except the main quest.
Right.
So you're going to do the main quest. But 2 hours later, you're sent out to go find this guy with a focus on literally the opposite side of the map. And
you encounter things along the way.
Right. And you have this big open world. So for me, it took me 20 hours before I went to go finish that quest.
How about, since we know what we can define as the main quest and what we can define as the main story, how possible would it be to just strip out all of the extra stuff?
I still think it would be kind of tricky because there's a lot of characters that I did mention in Meridian. There's the king who kind of is, I'd say he's a main character. And then, even though he doesn't necessarily help the plot along, And then there's like his right hand man kind of bodyguard who has his big collection of side quests that kind of flesh out his character. But like,
so when it comes to that, are a lot of them things that intertwine with the main story, or are they mostly just, hey, do this to understand this character?
More the latter.
Okay. Allow me to make a short disclaimer. This is not only to the audience, but just so that everybody understands the quote-unquote rules.
Everyone who's not in our audience that is still listening.
What our established rules are for making a film, and this is where it comes into difficulty with things like this, is we're not only trying to make a movie that reaches about 55% on Rotten Tomatoes, or would get that
or better
on that site, or better, hopefully better.
Definitely.
Well, we're also looking to make a film that is open to sequels, but does not in its planning include a sequel.
Well, I will disagree with you there because, I mean, the game sets up a sequel, so I see no reason we can't do that.
Sure, but the story itself ends.
Right, we have to make that, we have to fit the full plot of the game inside the first movie.
Right, and there are tons of movies that have done, they made a full film and they planned a sequel and they said, ooh, not planned, but they alluded to a sequel and then the film did terribly and so the sequel never existed.
Well, it's like I said, we have to make one movie out of the game.
Right. It's one movie. So when we talk about something this big, gaming really is the ultimate media for this because it's interactive and because you can have so many things and because you can change the story to however the person viewing it decides they want it to be.
Yeah, you can do...
to an extent.
You can... No, literally, I took 20 hours off doing some other side quests in the half of the map I wanted to have access to.
Sure, and that's the example of a good game.
And then I finally made my
If we're talking about ones that I think are lesser to that, for example, ones that try too much to be like a movie, like The Last of Us, they do limit it a bit. Because you can try and turn, in The Last of Us, it's like, well, I don't like this character. You turn around and shoot him, the mission ends. It's like, okay, you do a similar game like Skyrim or something. You turn around and kill the guy. It's like, okay, new mission, he's dead.
Unless it's a child.
But
there is a mod.
So when we're talking about this, how much of the side quest? I mean, how much of it can we just literally rip away from it?
I mean, that's the question. It's a really big question because, to the game's credit, a lot of the side quests, actually all of the side quests, all of the side content really helps to flesh out the world. And it all really kind of comes together towards the end. And you understand what's happening. You understand why there's giant robot dinosaurs. You understand where they come from. You understand what they're made out of. You understand what their functions are.
Do you think there would be simpler ways to describe that?
Probably, yeah. I don't think we have to get all into that, but I'm just saying the game does a really good job of blending story and gameplay in a way that does kind of make it difficult for us.
Okay.
Where it's not like say, a Ubisoft game where the world is merely a backdrop to the story,
Right. I get exactly
they're in
what
Venice this time.
This is much more of a Tolkien style project where the world itself has its entire lore fleshed out and you can learn it.
The story could not happen in just any old place. It has to happen here.
As we're in Assassin's Creed or something.
It's like palette swap.
Wherever.
Watch Dogs, who cares?
We're in London now. Why? Don't ask questions.
So yeah, one of our big questions is what do we strip? I think our other big question is how do we talk about the backstory? Because obviously we want the backstory in. Because, I mean, I know my biggest question when I was first going into the game is why are robot dinosaurs everywhere? Why am I in Colorado? And what's going on here? Something happened. Because the game is set in Colorado, Wyoming area. You can see landmarks and stuff.
That's interesting.
It's pretty cool, actually. I was out west last summer. It's I was like, oh yeah, from Horizon Zero Dawn. There's a big alligator in that water. I don't see him.
I like it. It is a big creature. Where are the robot dinosaurs?
I don't see. Are they staying home? Social distance.
Big robot mask.
But the backstory is there's no cutscenes of the backstory. What you have are my least favorite thing, audio logs. Actually, that's not true. You also have my really least favorite thing, text logs. And also you have
those do flesh out the story, but I imagine almost most, that's an exaggeration, but probably most people skipped over those.
And I believe you can't play audio logs while running around, which...
Oh, yeah. That's... Nope.
And there's also like holograms, but you can still like move around while they're playing.
Wait, so a visual medium allows you to move around while playing, but an audio medium doesn't allow you to move around while playing?
I guess not. Well, you can't like leave the room where the holograms are playing, but you can move around in the room. You can't really do anything, but you can move. You can jump and slide and all that stuff.
You can dance while you're watching it.
So not only do we have to it took me 7-8 minutes to tell you the backstory, and that was skipping over a lot. How do we convey that? I'd say 7 minutes is probably too long to spend on that in the movie. It has to be fairly quick. It has to be really concise, but it still has to pack the emotion that the game.
I think we can. Okay, for the lore, if we're going to do a big everything kind of lore, I think we can establish it. Oh man, you're gonna hate this.
Yeah.
So keeping with the theme of the logs and the information that is found, are there various areas that you go to, of course, in the game, where you'd find kind of these remnants of the past?
Yeah, you gotta, for instance, you go to Faro Industries, the big skyscraper, and up there you see holograms and stuff. Yeah.
Quests draw you to that, or is it just exploration?
It's all quests. You can't get in anywhere without a quest. It's very limiting in that regard.
And which ones draw you to those important places via main quest?
I mean, there's not one main quest throughout the game. Like, you complete a quest or you start a new one, but you go to these...
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you go to these ruins like probably 5-6 times throughout the game. Different ruins. And then you can spend a good amount of time in there doing very bad parkour that you can't see because it's very dark. And then
I think we can incorporate... You're going to hate the way I
don't have a problem with like incorporating one in there. One or two.
No. That's what I'm saying. We incorporate one ruin.
Yeah.
A log basically starts up. We do what the game didn't do. And we have it where it's an audio log that can be heard through the focus or whatever.
Yeah.
Or something of the sort. Right. So as we're hearing it, maybe like... I'm not trying to set up something without knowing how the game would work, but are the ruins dangerous places?
No. Well, sometimes. There's never robots in there. They're always, it's usually just human enemies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Were you saying she fights?
Then I would say dangerous in the fact that it is ruined, that the fact that it is not structurally sound, because I'd imagine that's why you're, of course, doing parkour.
Yeah. Are you saying that she just like does parkour while the audio plays?
Kinda. I would say that so it starts off and there's kind of a visual aspect to what's going on, and then maybe like something starts to you hear something creaking and it kind of tilts a little bit, and so she starts moving, switches it, does a thing like switches it and puts it, and now she's listening to it on the ear, and she's running around and doing the parkour, but it's very clear. And it's not something that it takes away from it, because we're still hearing this and receiving this information, and I think what she's running over and jumping over would be in relation. So the ruins of things, you would see these machine parts when it's talking about the AIs that were created. You would see these different, maybe she runs past a room and there's a bunch of pictures on the wall, and it's storytelling where we can have a whole 5-minute scene where she's doing this and it's giving this information as she's doing something else. So it's not just, hey, sit down and listen to this lore.
I mean, what you could do alternate to that. The problem I have with that is I feel like we don't want to, as important as the backstory is to the overarching Aloy story specifically, like you don't want to put it, people are going to be distracted more by the visuals, I think, than to really pay attention to the sound. Even if she
when you watch the beginning of The Lord of the Rings, it is narration. It is audio.
Right, but that's different.
You are getting visuals that enhance that. That's what I'm saying.
But
as she's doing her movement,
to be fair to the
we're
world,
seeing things that are showcasing that.
To be fair to the world, though, it doesn't really work. It's not all in one location.
No, of course it's not. But there are things that can be referential to that.
What I think we could do is we could kind of combine that There's an area towards the end of the game, which
Okay.
is like the last kind of bastion, so to speak, where like you walk in and you see a bunch of like skeletons, and you find out it was the army trying to hold out the robots. You find out this is where they were making Gaia. So
Do you think maybe that would be then
right?
where
Yeah, you have the audio,
log
but then
would have
and
been
then
found?
you like go into the boardroom, and then you see some holograms. And I think with that we just do holograms, and it's like a bunch of archived files just kind of playing one after another, like quickly, but enough to give us the idea of the story.
Right. So we've got the main important bits are narrated or audio logged or whatever.
Right.
And then when they enter the room, yeah, they get kind of the visuals of everything else. You see small video clips of war or whatever.
Whatever,
And
yeah.
then you see small video clips of, scientists working on machines and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and you hear like an argument between Elizabeth and Ted, where they're like arguing over something. They're like, they're on the doorstep. We don't have the option right now.
Yes, we do. I dropped the H in my name so that I could defend this country.
I saved 5 seconds over 2 years. I like that. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I feel like we don't obviously want to belittle the lore. That's the main point. I understand
Right.
that. But we don't want to do what anybody reading a Tolkien book does, is be forced to experience the lore so that anything else makes sense. I think we can set up the rest of the world, of course, in just a way that... Because Terminator makes sense. When you hear the basic of what happened with Terminator, you're not sitting there scratching your head the whole time. And it doesn't sound like this is so far-fetched.
Although, to be fair, Terminator does have an opening explanation scene.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, even in that, it's like...
Oh, yeah.
It's not like you're sitting there like, wait, how is this different from the real world? How is this different from our world?
Terminators is a lot easier to explain.
Yeah.
Terminator, Skynet took over and they
we
made
can
robots.
we can even almost do a Planet of the Apes thing, where even if it is wacky and weird and hard to explain, we don't ever reference it as something you're supposed to be relating to until the end, where you find out 100%. I mean, of course, if you played the game, you would already know this. And you might even see landmarks, and as the audience might deduce things from that.
Right.
But,
I think throughout the movie, you set up these mysteries. You're like for instance, there's these places called cauldrons, which is where the robots are made. And we can have a short little scene where she goes to one, she learns how to override a new type of machine for later. Maybe she learns to override the tall neck, which is the big, Stegosaurus robots that you climb up.
The Stethoscopus robots.
And then later on in that scene, we find out what the cauldrons are for. We found out they're set up by an AI to reproduce robots. And that can literally be it. But we set up all these mysteries, and then one after another, they're just resolved in this one scene.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
And it feels kind of satisfying. You're like, oh, okay, now what I see makes sense. I know why this is there. I know what's going on. And
definitely,
we also have the benefit.
Okay, yeah, definitely good, and still reminiscent, of things.
Right.
Not to reference it completely, but reminiscent of things like Planet of the Apes, where it's like, question, and then at the end it's like, oh.
And we also have Silence, who is kind of the mentor-y character, I guess. And obviously he can explain stuff later or earlier. The more, I guess, detailed stuff as Aloy's riding somewhere or going somewhere.
Doing things.
Okay, yeah, so let's kind of break through the structure because, like I said, the first act is super clear. It's great. I love it. But then it gets real complicated because the next, I guess, story beat is you go to Meridian, which is that big city. You look for this guy called Olin, who's the one with the focus that you saw at your town.
Yeah.
You find out he's not at home. You team up with a guy, I forget his name, Beard Man. You go through his house. You find out he's not there. You track his location. He's at an Eclipse camp. You rescue him. You find out the info. And then that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for that portion of the game. But that takes a while, and that's a lot of stuff to kind of skip over. And I don't think we necessarily should skip over.
Skip over it, but we need
after
to know
that,
what is the most important aspect of it. If you had to pick,
yeah,
the absolute most important thing that you think is going to evoke an emotional response from the audience or give information that they need from that, could you do that? Because you're going to have to trim it. Even obviously we keep it, but we got to trim it.
Okay, so what you could do is how does she get to Meridian? Should we just, because like I said, it's on basically the opposite side of the map. Do we just kind of Lord of the Rings it, where it's like big spanning shots? Because I feel like we still need to show her growing.
Oh, definitely. We're not gonna montage it. We're not gonna montage the whole film.
Right, but like this is a big journey. Should we show her fighting robots? Should we have scenes where she's fighting robots and stuff as she kind of makes her way over? Because basically that is
we need to pick the top 5 things that you do throughout the game.
Top 5 robots.
No, top 5 things that you do throughout the game in general.
I mean, I'd say we definitely need to include overriding stuff because that's pretty integral to the story.
Okay.
She learns that from a corruptor who, I believe there's one after Ross dies and she's sent out to go to Meridian. There's a corruptor at the front gates and she learns the skill from that. So we can keep that.
Okay.
That kind of breaks, I feel like that breaks the pacing a little bit, but that's not my fault. That's Guerrilla Games' fault. I didn't write that.
We don't have to include it in the way that they do. We include it, but we don't have to make it to where like, oh yes, now it's time to override the thing.
Well, I do want to make it as close to the story as possible, and also there's no better time to really put it in, to their credit. And then I'd say we need a cauldron, which is where the robots are made.
Yeah.
We need a tall neck, which is the big robot tower you climb. Let's see, what else can you do? There's hunting grounds, which aren't really relevant. There's like parkour segments where you climb up mountains to get little collectibles. There's bandit camps. We could do a bandit camp, I guess. And then,
you really got to trim it down. Here's the problem.
Well, you said top 5. I was trying to name 5.
I know, but you're aiming way too big. You're making these big things as if they're like big set pieces. You need to pick small events that we can turn into bigger things and make them one point in the film.
Well, the problem is there's not really small moments in the game.
What are you doing if you're walking? Are you walking most of the game? Are you running? Are you riding dinosaurs?
I didn't know, are we doing does running count as a thing?
Exploration? Is exploration a big thing in the game?
It can be, yeah.
Okay. What's your mode of transportation most of the time?
Usually running, but you can override a horse.
A horse?
A robot horse.
Okay, then obviously we incorporate the overriding into that. If we can tie things together and showcase, for example, we have the override thing showcased early on.
Yeah.
Then we introduce that into other aspects, not like in a sense of like, it's forced, but kind of like the way that the Atlantis crystals did it.
I don't know.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I have no idea what that means.
So in Atlantis, they had these crystals.
Are you talking about the real place?
I'm talking about the Disney movie Atlantis.
I've never seen that movie.
Okay, in the movie, every one of the Atlanteans has these little crystals. For them, they just have it. They it's like a tradition. They have it. It kind of represents their life force in kind of a way.
Yeah.
And they use it for various almost alchemical purposes, but very, very minor things. It isn't until they find out that it actually really has the ability to control these machines through Milo Thatch, the main character, who's not an Atlantean, who shows them how to do this, that everything really changes. So now they can go up and they can start, responding to situations differently. So with the override in mind, how early in the game does the character learn about how to override?
Basically into first act, right? Like I said, right after those first humans attack.
Okay. Then we could easily stretch that a little bit and have a scene where there are things where basically encounter something that seems like an immovable obstacle. Then we introduce the override, and that's basically not the cure-all, but that is the solution to that problem. And we see later how it becomes the solution to almost every problem.
That's not really how it works. That's not really how it works, though.
Okay, how does it work?
I guess the knowledge or the skill of override by killing a machine. called a corruptor. So
Okay.
she doesn't just like have the ability, I guess, if that she has to gain the ability by killing a specific machine.
All right then. That
it's a little harder.
That does not play well into a movie.
That's what I'm saying.
We're gonna have to break away. We're gonna have to make some liberties. Take some liberties.
What are you saying?
I am saying we can allude to that.
What you can do is when those first humans attack, you can just have a corruptor with them. And then she takes it down, and then like she's looking at it, and she's like, oh, I can use this.
How does that make sense to the audience?
How does that make sense to the audience? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
How does it? I don't know.
No, I'm being very genuine. So, without the knowledge from the game,
you have to have it in there somewhere. Like it's integral to it's what defeats the final bad guy.
Sure, and if that's the case, then definitely we'll keep it in there. But how do you explain that to the audience without a wordy tutorial explanation?
I mean, you could show it. You could. I believe what happens.
So you show her killing the beast. Now, what do you tell the audience?
Well,
what does the audience see?
I believe it in the game. It's shown that the corruptor can like take over control of robots. So you could show.
Yeah, you said that earlier. The corruptor was it was basically what started turning everything against the humans.
Yeah, so it can basically, it's called corruption. It basically makes them go basically crazy. And
so is it killing them gives you the ability to understand them?
Killing the corruptor, no, only killing the one corruptor. She gets what the corruptor core or whatever it is. She attaches it to her spear, and from then on, she can corrupt. Or I guess.
Do we have a character that can explain that so that the audience isn't left in the dust?
No, nobody. Literally, no one knows about this until.
How does she find out about it?
She sees that it corrupts the robots and kind of puts two and two together.
I would introduce it as it's something being explained. If no character explains it, then we can't do that. I would also introduce it as something where she doesn't have to kill it to learn how to do it. It could be killed and she gets the core from something else and then learns about it from somebody else or from a audio log.
You like putting in those audio logs?
Well, not necessarily like that, but you know what I'm saying? She would learn about it from something else because if she's going to put two and two together, we have to assume that it has to be done simply enough for the audience to put two and two together. And not just, oh, wait, I have this orb or this core. Sorry, I don't know what it looks like. I have this core, and now I see, oh, wait, it affects something. It's like, okay, how can you show that without it being,
Let's say she kills the corruptor.
Mm-hmm.
I say let's have this after the humans attack. Let's have this be like the next scene.
So after the bandits strike.
Right, yeah. Or maybe it just kind of runs up on her because robots happen sometimes.
We would establish that early on too, that the robots are just kind of like the animalistic threat.
And there's a whole other thing I haven't gotten into called the derangement. That one's not that important, but basically robots are getting more violent as the years go by. That one's not that important.
So, well, that can easily be explained as a side note. It could be like, the corruption started this way, and then now they've become deranged.
Basically, yeah, so she sees a corruptor, and maybe we change the timeline a little bit, so like she's already set out on her journey, it's nighttime, she's relaxing, then she sees like a strange red light off in the distance, goes to investigate. She sees the corruptor corrupt the machines, and we could show, there's a very clear visual in the games where they turn red and like spread out little particle effects or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, like, maybe she defeats the corruptor. She sees that the robots go back to normal. And she starts digging through it. She finds this corruptor core. She's like, oh, what does this do? And then she's attacked by, like, a scrapper or something, which is one of the lower level enemies. Maybe one that was corrupted. She, like, holds the core up in defense, just to, like, block herself. And then it's shown that it's, like, now passive. With that same
like
kind of
it backs off,
Yeah, well, it's basically when you corrupt a machine.
Not like back off, like run away, but it like stands down.
It does not attack her.
Okay, I'm definitely okay with that.
That's a way we could show it.
I'm 100% okay with that. I think, and we would need to, how is her character set up in a way that she would straight up, of course, attack this thing when she sees it, the corruptor?
The corruptor, I mean,
or would
that's
somebody
have
to tell her that is something to look out for?
I think it's more likely it would attack her. Like, maybe she gets a little too close to it, looking at it.
What means of attack does it have?
Does it have?
The corruptor itself.
It has one where it throws a boulder at you. And also just
I think that would be interesting.
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
she could be looking at it, and then it turns, like it catches gaze, and then she hides behind the tree. She's like, thinking, did it see me? Not aloud, but visually. And she's like, did it see me? And then you just see this huge rock,
huge boulder just crash through the tree. Yeah. So yeah, you could.
That would be great.
You could set it up. I like that. Changes things a little bit, but that's all right.
Yeah, well, and the only reason why I'm thinking a key like that is because when you're actually interacting with something, you're going to be more... When you're playing a game, you think on your feet better. Because then you can start deducing things and putting two and two together. But when you're watching a movie, most often you like things laid out before you.
Right.
And that's the general audience. You want to sit down
and enjoy your popcorn.
Yeah, you're watching a movie. You want the information to be delivered to you in a way that is enjoyable, but you still can understand it. Because if you walk out of the movie theater going, "What in the world was that film?" You probably didn't enjoy it,
right? Okay,
unless you were on drugs and you walk out going, "Well, what was that film?"
I don't even know what happened. So, all right, should we have other stuff happen to her on her journey to Meridian? I mean, you said you don't want to montage it, so what are you suggesting?
We don't montage it. I think once she finds out about this override thing, and the ability to defeating a corruptor, corrupting a certain thing does this, I think we can fill in the gaps. So she finds out the most basic information about that from her own experience.
Yeah.
Then we can fill in the gaps with explanation from another source. That way we're not showing her doing it again and realizing, oh, I have to specifically do it to this one that has corrupted this thing,
Right. Well, after she corrupts the scrapper, and calms it down, she's like, maybe I could use this on other things. And then maybe the next scene, she's like sneaking up on a charger, which is a strider, which is like the horse. Yeah. You can also ride chargers. Not important. Those are the ones like bulls. No, those are the ones like ramps. Not important. And so, and then she corrupts it. She realizes she can ride it. And then she can goes like, And then maybe we can cut from there to see her like flying down a pathway on this horse.
Yeah, that would be good. Because if she knows where she's kind of headed, she's got a goal that she's heading to. Then we can just see it as she's using all these tools to her advantage and she's learning things about the world on the way.
Yes.
That's not necessarily a montage. It's just shortening the path there.
Yeah. So what happens next in the game is you go to this place called Day Tower, which is kind of the middle point between the two. And it basically leads into like the more deserty land from the snow forest.
Okay.
So we can skip that entirely. I don't believe anything really happens there. And she could just kind of go straight. I feel like we should have it in there. Maybe she can pull up there and like kind of rest. Yeah,
I definitely think that could totally work.
Yeah. I'm just kind of...
Because we're not forcing so much information that it's, at least to me, it's definitely digestible.
Yeah.
It's easy to accept, but you're still getting the information that the game would have given you through experiences that you would have had to do yourself and kind of trial and error for. Because you can't really trial and error in a movie.
Right, yeah. Maybe there we can set up like some more world building, like the Karja clan and the Oseram clan. She's sitting around a campfire and she meets these people. Whatever, something. A short little scene. I do think if we're just kind of overlooking, I do think we need to include a cauldron, which is where the robots are made, just because that's pretty important. Yeah. And then I think we should include a tall neck for nothing else than the iconography of it.
Yeah.
And
it's one of those kind of set pieces. It's one of the things from the game that you will
and you can make up some reason she needs to go there. Like for instance, there's a bandit camp that they've like taken over the tall neck's path, so it can be something like that. Like maybe they got to go rescue someone. Anyway, we can get to that later.
And it shows up, yeah, right. Definitely.
So I think from there it's pretty much straight on to Meridian, the big city. She's still looking for this guy. Don't forget about that. Don't forget she's still looking for that guy. I know it's been a while since we talked about it. So in the game, he's not there. Do you think he should be there just to kind of speed things up, or maybe it's made a little more obvious that he's not there?
If we can make a quick dip, meaning in the game he's not there, where is he?
He's been captured by the Eclipse.
can we put that into
Well, we could
showcasing another feature? Meaning, can we speed up the way that she gets to the eclipse and then have that tie into something else?
I think so. I think she could literally show up in Meridian and kind of meet with Aaron, who's that like kind of right-hand man guy.
Yeah.
And he met her before in her village. And so she's like, well, I'm looking for this guy. And he's like, oh, his home, it looks like he was kidnapped or something. We found this. And he holds up like a focus or something she can trace. And she's like, all right, I know where it is. And he's like, okay, well, I'll go with you.
That works.
So super short, super simple. Doesn't really set that much up in Meridian, but we go there a lot.
Easily like a 10-minute scene at most.
And we go to Meridian in the game like for the main quest like 5 or 6 times. So we could easily have it be there at least one more time.
Oh, definitely. We do a simple setup so that when we come back later, it's easily identifiable.
Okay, so after the rescue alone, you have the option of doing like a side quest with Aaron. We don't care about that. But the next option is you find out that they are kind of holed up far to the north in like Faro Industries, which is not that last location where she's going to find everything out. This is another location. And there they find another giant robot called a Deathbringer, which is like basically a gigantic tank.
As the name might suggest, I wonder what it brings.
He's not very friendly. But after she goes there, she is contacted by Silence. So one way or another, we need Silence to contact her.
Yeah.
Do you think we should have that scene at all? Like where she goes all the way to Faro Industries, finds up little bits and pieces about the main story?
If you think that it's something that we can establish something in that will help later, then yes. But if you think it's something that we can condense into a bigger scene later, then no.
Well, honestly, Deathbringers,
meaning if you establish maybe, and it depends on what her, I'm not trying to assume that she's naive, but her level of knowledge about this stuff is. If she's going to be able to access something later because of the focus, where it's very easy for her to access things, then we don't need a scene where she's getting information about this.
Right, yeah,
however,
exactly.
if we want to give her in this film a naivety to that, kind of a lack of understanding with it, we give a scene where she goes somewhere and maybe she learns how to access these logs. She learns how to access information. We get a little bit of information. Then because she's there, she gets contacted.
I like that, yeah. So it's not the whole thing where you fight the Deathbringer, you climb up to the top of the tower. It's like more condensed, like you said.
Yeah.
She fights a couple of Eclipse guys. Maybe she fights some big robot. Take your pick. There's a couple of them.
Dude, the coolest robot.
You kind of have that downtime. I know you like using the word downtime. You have that downtime where she's contacted by
I don't think
Silence.
I use it correctly, but boy, do I like using it.
No, I get what you mean, though. You don't want to be up here all the time. So yeah, I think she's contacted by Silence, and then basically the next big thing that happens is she sneaks into the Eclipse base.
Okay.
And there she kind of finds the main bad guy. And she finds out about Hades, which is this like kind of rogue AI that the Eclipse is keeping in their camp. And that's kind of the point of that scene. So I'm fine with keeping that in. It's got a fun like escape sequence. You can be tense
and it establishes something that is going to be pivotal to the end.
Right, and Aloy finds out that Silence used to be in the Eclipse there, so we can keep that in as well to have that tension drama between them.
How does she respond to that in the game?
Not great, not very well.
Then should we push that later on so there can be kind of a confrontation about it?
Well, I think honestly, I feel like we're end of second act hour already.
Does she quit communicating with him after she figures this out?
I forget. I think she just doesn't trust him as much. But we can make it be.
We don't have to make it harsh. We just need to make it very clear that she takes this negatively.
Yeah.
And her actions from that point onward are a showcase of how it's taken negatively.
Right. So basically, the next thing that happens is she goes to another town on the other side of the map called Sunfall, and it's a city built over an old bunker, and there she finds some more stuff, blah blah blah. But she is kidnapped by the bad guy, and basically has to fight her way out of an arena without any weapons. So
I think that could be definitely showcased as something fun.
And then I think we should probably head on quick towards the end here.
Chugga, chugga, chugga.
We could skip the next part where she has to go to the other side of the map and save that. There's a lot of that going around because the Nora are being attacked. And basically, the end of the game, you fight a bunch of robots who are trying to besiege the city. You kill the bad guy, and then you defeat Hades by, I believe, you corrupt him. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Once we get the ball rolling, once we get what we need to get established to the audience, do you think we can literally just jump through all those points? Obviously not like we're speeding through it, but we can go ahead and go from point to point to point without having to establish anything until we reach the end, where we establish the final lore and then we showcase the quote-unquote final boss.
I forgot about the lore scene. We could throw that in somewhere. That's not important.
I think we should throw it in pretty close to the end. Because we do want that kind of...
We can have it...
It's almost weird. This is weird. Yeah. It's going to be like an emotional high. It's going to be like, here's all your questions answered. Also, here's something else we're going to go ahead and wrap up. You know?
Honestly, I think we should put it right before she gets kidnapped. Like, she sneaks into a bunker, finds out all the info, then she's kidnapped. Yeah, so she gets kidnapped, and then, like I said, from them on, we pretty much speed right towards the end. She finds out the robots are going to try to besiege the city, or the corrupted robots, rather. She warns the king, and then she fights the final bad guy, fights Hades, the end.
And in the sense that the game alludes to a second, you want to keep that alluding to a sequel, or do you want to kind of...
I like the sequel, alluding to it.
Obviously wraps up the story for as what we know the story to be now.
There is a bit of a problem that I did not bring up earlier, I just remembered, and that is that Aloy doesn't really have a character arc. But I guess she doesn't necessarily...
Okay, let's... Here we go. Yeah. This is called making one.
This is called Joe Makes Aloy's Character Arc. My favorite segment on the show.
Boy, it's a special one. What in the game... You say she doesn't have any kind of character arc.
Not really.
Is there anything that she learns that you think could be twisted into a character arc?
I mean, she learns that she is a clone of Elizabeth, which could have some good stuff.
We don't want to go too deep. We don't want to be like finding out who you are. We could go with finding what your purpose is.
She throughout the beginning of the game especially, she always kind of questions, like she wants to kind of belong somewhere because she doesn't know who she is. Like, she's motherless, she's fatherless.
Boom, boom, boom. You just answered your own question.
I know I did, but I was burping, so I couldn't finish my sentence, but go ahead.
No, you got it.
So basically, yeah, once she finds out she's a clone, she kind of has that sense of belonging.
And we can establish that through just her development as she goes along. We can obviously have her upset, and then she's working to belong. Obviously, she wants to become a seeker because she wants to fit in somewhere. And then as everything gets turned around, she kind of her sense of purpose maybe gets twisted. We do want to challenge that. And should there be a character that challenges that?
Well, you could actually kind of flip what I just said, and have her, she has this kind of relationship with Silence, relationship with Aaron, she forms a relationship with the king, and these other characters that don't matter as much. And so, like, you see her kind of coming out of her shell, and she's getting a little more friendly, you feel like she's belonging. And then when she finds out she's a clone, it can literally be like, oh, I don't actually belong anywhere. I'm a clone of some woman 600 years ago.
Gotcha.
But at the end of the day, she
gets her sense of purpose.
Right.
The sense of belonging, even though it's not in the way. So she does question it
when she finds out she's a clone, but
comes to terms with that.
Comes to terms with who she is, or more so the difference between her and Elizabeth.
I like that.
So I think
it'd be really interesting. We do have a scene when she's seeing all the bits of the information. We do have the scene where she sees a conversation on record between Elizabeth and Ted. I think it would be interesting if there's visual for that. She's infatuated with the fact that she looks exactly like her, or whatever.
That's kind of the driving... I'm sorry, there's so much I forgot to mention. But, like, when she picks up... when the bandits attack at the beginning, she finds a focus, and then in the focus is basically like a wanted poster for Elizabeth.
Okay, then we can establish that. We can establish that really early on.
Sorry, there's a lot. I'm sure there's a ton I'm forgetting, but it is quite a lot to go through.
All right. Well,
we included Tallneck in the scene where they go rescue Olin at the Eclipse camp. I'm good with that. And then I think just somewhere in the second act, she goes to a cauldron and learns to learns to control other beasts. Because maybe we could set up that problem earlier on. Like she tries to, it's actually called overriding, not corrupting when Aloy does it, because she's the good guy. She tries to override a sawtooth, and it like doesn't work. So we could set that up, and then later on she realizes, oh, I have to go to the cauldron, or maybe Silence tells her, so she does it and learns how to do it.
I like that, and I know that may not be how the game would have introduced it, but the introduction of her having something and then maybe being like, this, why it worked before, why doesn't it work now? And then it can just be easily explained. It's like, oh, well, that seems to only be configured for this, or whatever.
Right.
And I don't know how the guy talks, but
not like that.
How does he talk?
You know Lance Reddick? You know who Lance Reddick is? No, you know the guy in Destiny? The guy with the very deep
okay,
voice?
so that's you told me about that. That was the same guy.
It's that guy.
Oh, okay.
He's
cool.
a real actor.
He's a real man, except he's not shiny, bald-headed man.
He's bald. Hey, he's bald in Horizon Zero Dawn. He has wires in his chin and his.
No, wait a minute.
Uncomfortable.
No, wait a minute.
Okay, yeah, I'm cool with that.
All right, I like that.
I don't think we need a recap because I feel like half this darn episode was recapping.
Well, with that in mind, are you content with this?
I think we got ourselves a Horizon Zero Dawn movie.
Well.
Called Horizon Zero Dawn, I guess. Rated PG-13, so all kids will come.
All of the childs.
All the childs?
Dude, I used to be hip enough to call them childs.
All the cheering? All the cheering be cheering.
Well, I enjoyed our idea of a show, and I know that sounds weird.
I enjoy talking about Horizon Zero Dawn's story for 70% of this podcast, but now my throat's sore.
I think this was a good exercise because it was definitely different than what we've had to do before, and it let both of us kind of see compromise in that way.
I can't wait for your turn in the lore seat.
Oh yeah, it'll be. Well, I was almost there with Doom. Didn't really do it.
We figured Doom out. I know more about Doom than you know about Horizon Zero Dawn, or did know. Now you know everything.
Now I know everything.
Well, let's wrap the show up. My throat hurts.
If you like the show, which we hope you did.
This was a different episode, but it was interesting. What would you have put in?
Yeah. If you have any suggestions or ideas, you can put it down. If you're on YouTube, put it in the comments below.
Yeah,
if you're on any of our other services, shoot us an email.
Reelism@gmail.com. That's realism with 2 E's. And be sure to share the show with a friend. A lot of Horizon Zero Dawn fans out there. We are on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, like Joe said. Wherever you get your podcasts, be sure to follow us or rate us or subscribe. Just kind of help get the word out, help get more ears in our podcast zone.
And if you want the one-stop shop for all those links, you can go to our website. And that's www.speculativerealism, that's realism with 2 E's, like a film reel, .com.
And on the website, we also got a link to our Patreon if you want to support us financially. We really appreciate it. Okay. And we're also on social media. Where are we at, Joe?
We are at SpecReel, once again, REEL. SPECREEL. What does it mean to me?
Oh, you should have said, what does it spell?
It spells smells?
Spec real.
Oh.
Go,
We're
Rileys.
on there on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Facebook, all the fake news.
All the Facebook. No, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and
we got show updates.
We
got show previews.
Show previews.
We got announcements of other kinds. I'm getting married.
When?
Announcement.
Oh, so you'll put it on Twitter.
Yeah. And fake books. Or whatever it's called these days.
All right.
All right, well, it looks like we are about to head off. Spec Station is starting to pull out. We're going to leave.
You want to do that one again? You butchered it.
I think I nailed it.
We'll see you on the next stop.
A choo-choo.
Bye.
Da, 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 da.